Now, both the European and the African Unions have urged for the facilitation of inclusive dialogue to bring a lasting solution to Burundi. While lauding the improved security situation in the country, the two regional bodies called on both the government and the opposition to genuinely engage in dialogue facilitated by the East African Community mediators. They also agreed on the need for the full deployment of African Union civilian and military observers to the country. The EU and the AU made the observations during the African Union Peace and Security Council and the European Union Political and Security Committee on the 9th Annual Joint Consultative Meeting in Brussels. Let's discuss this further now with CCTV's Elena Casas-Montanes. She's joining us live with the latest from Brussels. Elena, a seemingly positive report there from both the European Union and the African Union on the situation in Burundi. Are there any indications on that end that this could lead to a re-evaluation of the European Union's engagement with Burundi?
Well, for the moment, yes, it's positive, but the language that the EU is choosing is moderated. The European Union and the African Union, as you said, don't intend to let up pressure on either the Burundian government or the opposition to continue to engage in meaningful dialogue that's brokered by the East African community. So while the EU says that yes, it's very pleased to see a reduction in violence in Burundi in recent months, they've also said that they don't intend to let up sanctions that are currently in place on Burundi. Those were imposed in March and they've been extended until the end of October 2017 on some particular Burundian individuals. The EU also doesn't intend to reinstate development funding for Burundi that was scrapped in March as part of the sanctions programme, or to reinstate funding for the Burundian peacekeeping mission in Somalia. So at the moment the EU is saying yes, Burundi is making good progress, but they won't be having any European money until that progress is clearer.
Well, this development, though, Elena, comes barely a week after Burundi confirmed its intention to exit the International Criminal Court. Did this come up at all during that session? And how is this likely to impact the European Union's position on Burundi moving forward?
Absolutely. The European Union Foreign Minister Federica Mogherini said at this meeting that she was extremely concerned by Burundi's decision, and of course that of South Africa, to exit the International Criminal Court. And it absolutely will have an impact on Europe's future policy on Burundi going forward. In order to reinstate that European Union development funding for Burundi and lift those sanctions that are still in place, the EU really wants to see Burundi cooperating with international law, and of course leaving the International Criminal Court gives out exactly the opposite signal for what Europe is looking to see. So at the moment they haven't announced any concrete new measures as a response to Burundi's decision to leave the ICC, but the European Union is certainly saying that it's extremely concerned.
Well, Elena, the Gambia has now today joined Burundi and South Africa in making clear its intention to withdraw from the International Court. Have we had any reaction from the court and the European Union so far on Gambia's position and South Africa's position as well?
We haven't had any yet this morning since Gambia made its announcement from the International Criminal Court. But as you mentioned there, the Chief Prosecutor Fatou Bensouda is herself a former Justice Minister of Gambia, so this will come as a personal rebuke to her. Of course, she's been very keen since taking up that role to stress that the International Criminal Court is not trying to deliberately target African countries in an unfair way. She's made it very clear that she's interested in opening prosecutions outside Africa into, for example, events in Ukraine or perhaps events in Israel over Palestine. It's just simply that the cases that have come before the court so far have all been referred by African governments or referred to the court by other governments involving African protagonists. So she's very keen to stress that this is simply a coincidence. It's a matter of circumstance. It's not that the court is deliberately trying to prosecute only war crimes that were committed in Africa. But of course the court's image has been damaged by this perceived notion that it only targets crimes committed in Africa, and that notion is now pushed 3 African countries, as you said, to say that they're thinking about leaving. So the onus will now very much be on Bensouda and on the court to try and perhaps persuade those countries to change their mind, or at least persuade other African countries not to follow suit, because if any more do announce that they're leaving, it very much calls into question the entire credibility of the court's existence.
Right, Elena Casas-Montanes for us there in Brussels.